In a small town bookstore, a clerk named Joe strikes up a conversation with a client named Ash. Their connection is immediate, and they decide to grab coffee together. As they chat about the philosophical idea of life's ultimate purpose, they find common ground and begin a relationship. Their connection deepens, and they quickly become inseparable. One morning at a cafe, Joe casually asks Ash about her job, but Ash dodges the question, instead revealing something deeply personal: she loves him. Soon after, a confrontation takes place nearby where Hunter, a mysterious man, spots Joe and challenges him. After a brief altercation, Hunter violently strikes the man, which only adds to the tension. Ash, still reluctant to share details of her life, reveals she is not from the area, but before she can elaborate, Hunter approaches. Without warning, he shoots Ash in the head, leaving Joe in utter shock and horror. Joe, devastated and in disbelief, clings to her lifeless body, struggling to process what just happened. Hunter leaves the scene, leaving behind a gun on a nearby table. As Joe tries to follow Hunter, the mysterious assailant vanishes into an alley, and for the next 2 weeks, Joe spirals into a deep depression. He cancels plans, isolates himself from everyone, and spends his days shut away in his apartment. His friend Oliver makes repeated attempts to visit, and eventually, Joe reluctantly lets him in. Despite Oliver's attempts to cheer him up with coffee, Joe is numb, unable to taste or feel anything. His arm is so weak that the cup slips from his hand. When Oliver tries to offer words of comfort, Joe rejects them, pushing him away. Oliver, unable to help, leaves, leaving Joe alone in his grief. In his desperation, Joe purchases a gun and a collection of bullets, intending to end his pain. He attempts to end his life, but each time he pulls the trigger, the gun malfunctions, not firing. He tests it on a couch, and while the bullet does finally discharge, the gun fails to work again when aimed at himself. Meanwhile, the apartment's AI detects the gunshot and wants to alert the authorities, but Joe convinces it that it was an accident. Frustrated, he shoots out the window to break the glass and jumps out of the apartment, but instead of falling, he finds himself floating, surrounded by shards of glass. He hears Ash's voice calling his name, but he suddenly wakes up in his bed, assuming it was all just a dream. The sofa is undamaged, and the gun remains on the table. The AI informs him that there are messages from Ash, and in a panic, Joe runs out of the apartment building. As he walks down the street, he sees a woman with an odd effect on her face, and in a strange moment of déjà vu, he thinks he sees Ash's face on a nearby billboard. His phone repeatedly receives messages from Ash, which shouldn't be possible. Terrified, Joe turns to Oliver for guidance. Oliver speculates that the messages might be pre-recorded by Ash, set up for him in case something happened. Encouraged by this theory, Joe opens the messages, and Ash's face appears on a video, explaining that if he's seeing this, something has happened to her. She urges him to visit the bookstore and pick up a special order under his name. Meanwhile, in a dark room, Erica and her team are tracking Joe's movements. Joe arrives at the bookstore and picks up the special order, a small book with a note from Ash on the first page. When Joe reads the note, a sharp pain strikes his head, and his vision blurs. The sensation is brief but unsettling. As he leaves the bookstore, unaware that he's being followed by a mysterious man, the man reports back to Erica, who orders him to stop Joe and retrieve the book. As the situation escalates, more operatives are dispatched to follow Joe, some even posing as tenants in his building. One man manages to sneak into Joe's apartment, but Joe narrowly escapes after an intense encounter. His body moves with incredible speed and precision, and he dispatches his assailants one by one, even as his confusion grows. After the encounter, Joe sees a live video feed of Ash. This isn't just a pre-recorded message, It's a real-time transmission. Ash explains her situation. She's a real woman, living in the real world, working for an intelligence agency. Her appearance in the digital universe, Do, was part of her mission. And she explains that Joe is actually a part of the Do, a simulation created by Hunter, a software engineer. Joe, stunned by this revelation, learns that his existence is not real, but Ash insists that he is real to her, and that her love for him transcends his digital nature. Ash shares the story of Hunter's unethical experiments with the Do and how he built this complex virtual world, using simulated people for various experiments. Hunter's experiments caused glitches in the system, and Ash's mission is to stop him. She's been trying to find a way out, but it was only after meeting Joe that she realized the depth of her feelings for him. As they continue their conversation, Joe learns that the book she gave him carries critical data they need to escape the Do, but there are dangers in doing so. The people in charge of the Do, including Hunter, will do everything in their power to prevent them from succeeding. Meanwhile, Erica confronts Hunter about the growing problems with the Do and the risk of it being exposed. Hunter, however, dismisses her concerns, obsessing over the progress of humanity instead. Ash's team continues to work against him, and with Oliver's help, they plan to shut down the Do and free Joe and the other trapped souls. However, as the world around Joe and Ash begins to glitch more frequently, they realize that Hunter is closing in on them, and time is running out. In a final confrontation, Joe must face Hunter head-on, risking his existence in the process. Despite the overwhelming odds, Joe fights for his love and for the possibility of a real life with Ash. But as Hunter prepares to erase him completely, something unexpected happens. Joe regains control of his body and defies the very system that created him. With Oliver's help, Joe manages to escape the Do, and in a thrilling final act, he confronts Hunter, dismantling his control over the universe and finally freeing himself and Ash. In the end, the love between Joe and Ash proves that even in a world of digital simulations, the most human of emotions can still be real.